So this first part's going to be a little interesting. Okay. What do we know about the letter I? What is it equal to? It is equal to the square root of -1. Yes? Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you make it a little bit bigger? Oh. What? I can't see. Yeah.
Okay. So far, so good? Sorry, dude. Okay. So if I asked you what I squared is, wouldn't you take this, and to square it means to multiply it by itself, right? Or another way of saying that is the square root of -1 squared, and a square root cancels out a square, leaving me with what? -1. Now, these two are well, actually this one is the most important one for you to know, but I just want to go further because it's kind of interesting. How would I find out I to the third power? Write it 3 times. What do you think I'm going to get? Now, let's think about this for a minute. Let's save ourselves some work. Isn't this, hang on, this equaled -1, right? Isn't these two -1? So this is really -1 times the square root of -1, right? Because the two are -1, yeah? And what's the square root of -1? So don't I have -1 times I, which ends up being -I.
So this, you're just giving us like a cheat sheet.
Hang on. Sorry, I have to scroll it out a little bit. We're going to discover a pattern, is what we're going to discover. Okay. So here's another question. I to the 4th. Isn't that the same thing as I squared times I squared? Okay, what is I squared? Isn't it -1? So that's really -1 times -1, which is 1. Okay, I'm going to do more of them this way. So I to the 5th, I'm going to call that I to the 2nd times I to the 3rd. What is I to the 2nd? -1. What's I to the 3rd? What's -1 times -I? Positive I. I to the 5th is I to the 2nd times I to the 3rd. Do you get that?
Oh, and I to the 3rd.
I to the 2nd is -1. I to the 3rd is -I. -1 times -I is I. Now, could I have done that one a different way? Absolutely. I could have called that I to the 4th times I to the 1st, right? Let's do I to the 6th. Do I want to do I to the 6th? Do I want to do I to the 3rd times I to the 3rd? Or do I want to do I to the 4th times I to the 2nd? It doesn't really matter. So let's see. I to the 3rd times I to the 3rd, I'm hearing? What is I to the 3rd? Isn't it -I? So what's -I times -I? Positive I squared. And what is I squared?
-1.
This is weird.
Huh. I'm noticing a typo in just a few minutes. All right, I to the 7th. I'm going to do I to the 3rd times I to the 4th. Okay? What is I to the 3rd? -I. What is I to the 4th? 1. And what's -I times 1? -I. I to the 8th, I'm going to do I to the 4th times I to the 4th. Yeah? That's 1 times 1, which is 1. Any guesses? First off, do you notice my typo?
Yeah.
What's,
Notice the pattern?
yeah, pattern has an N at the end, not an M. But anyways, what do you think I to the 9th is going to be?
I. Positive I. Positive I.
What is the pattern?
-1, -I.
Nope. I, -1, -I, +1. So I have I, then I have -1, -I, +1. I, -1, -I, +1, which is why the next one's going to be I. It follows this pattern over and over and over again. Kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Now, I just kind of wanted to show you that a little bit because you'll investigate that further probably next year. But the ones that you are mainly going to be focused on are mostly I squared with a little bit of I to the 3rd thrown in there. But I wanted to show you these in case you happen to come across an I to the 4th. You should be able to get that. Do you notice that every single one of these simplifies to something that has no exponent? So we're not going to have any exponents in our answers. Our answers are still going to be in A plus BI form. Okay? So, we're multiplying. So let's get to our multiplying. If I were to multiply these, let's pretend it's not an I right now, and it's just a variable. Okay? Negative times a positive is negative 9I squared. Is this A plus BI form?
No.
A plus BI, there is no I squared. Do you notice that? What is I squared equal to? -1. So I can never, ever, ever see an I squared in your answer. You must replace the I squared with -1.
Wow, this is too much.
What's -9 times -1? +9. That's my answer.
Okay, that's easy.
Okay? That's the only time that we have to change things is when there's an exponent on the I. So let's try this guy. This is really distributive property, isn't it?
Yeah.
-8I times 5 would be
40.
-40I. And -8I times -2I would be +16I squared. Now what do I have to replace I squared with? -1. So I really have -40I plus 16 times -1. What is 16 times -1? So what should I write first? The -40I or the -16? So I have -16 minus 40I. Still kind of easy?
Yeah.
Okay, what about this one? You can use either the distributive method or the box method for multiplying.
Not boxes or something.
Huh?
That's not boxes.
This is not snowflakes.
I know.
No. Okay. I'll go ahead and do this one distributive, and then I'll do the next one box method, okay?
Box distributed.
Yeah. Because I'm just multiplying, right? -8 times 5 is -40.
Oh, that's easy.
-8 times -I is +8I. +5I times +5 is
25.
+25I. And +5I times -I is -5I squared. Right? Yeah? So I'm going to do a couple things here. I got to I got to combine my like terms. What's 8I and 25I? 33I minus 5, and then instead of I squared, I put -1. So I have -40 plus 33I, and -5 times -1 is +5. So what's my final answer going to be? I got to combine those two. Negative 40 and positive 5 would be negative 35 plus 33i. Not too bad, right?
It's not too bad.
Okay. What's different about number 5?
It has a square.
It has the squared, so everybody just wants to square the negative 2 and square the negative 4i, which is wrong.
Yeah, you have to write
Because what it means is write it twice. So it's really negative 2 minus 4i times negative 2 minus 4i. Correct? All right. I said I'd do the box method here. I didn't give myself very much room to write, did I? No. Sorry, I should have spaced it out a little more. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Okay, so I'm going to do the box method for those of you that prefer that for multiplying. Excuse me. If you do the multiplication or the distributive method that I just did, stick with that. That's fine. I need a 2 by 2. So let's see. Negative 2 and minus 4i. And then negative 2 and minus 4i. And then I treat it like a multiplication table. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Negative 2 times negative 4i is 8i. Negative 4i times negative 2 is 8i. And negative 4i times negative 4i is positive 16i squared. Yes? So let's see. I have 4. I have 16i. And then plus 16, what am I going to write instead of I squared? Negative 1, right? So that gives me 4 plus 16i minus 16. What's my final answer? Negative 12 plus 16i. That's my answer for number 5.
Is there another way you can do it besides the little box?
Yeah, you can do it the way I did it here. Number 4. Those are your two ways, the box or the distributive method. If you don't like both of those, sorry. Find something on YouTube maybe that works, I don't know. Okay, so you try number 6. Do number 6 in your preferred method. All right, so what have I got here? Negative 7 times positive 8 is? Negative 7 times positive I. That's positive 1i, right? Gives me negative 7i. What about I times 8?
8i.
And I times I?
Plus I squared.
All right, let's do some simplifying here. I have negative 56. And then what have I got there? Plus I. Plus, what do I put instead of I squared? So what's negative 56 plus negative 1? Negative 57 plus I. Not too shabby? This one, just in case you're keeping tabs, was negative 12 plus 16i. All right, now what do you notice about number? Yes, question? What do you notice in number 7?
There's 3 parentheses.
There's 3 parentheses. The first 2 should be pretty easy to take care of, right? What does that give me? Negative 18i squared. So if I have negative 18i squared, I'm going to go ahead and replace that I squared before I go on to the next step. So that would be negative 18 times negative 1, which ends up being, now I have to take that positive 18 and multiply it through the negative 7 plus 6i, but that's basic distributive property, right? 18 times negative 7, oh crud, I gave myself a problem I need my calculator for. 18 times negative 7 is negative 126. And then 18 times positive 6 is plus 108i. Not too hard, right? Okay. Do you notice 8 and 9 are the same type of problem?
Yeah.
It's one term and then two terms and then two terms? Okay. So I'm going to show you how to do number 8, and then I want you to try number 9. You ready? Now, you could do this a couple different ways. Let me explain to you the different ways that I can think of right now off the top of my head. You could start off by multiplying these guys using the box or the distributive method, and then distribute this through whatever the answer is you get. Your other option is distribute this through the first parentheses, and then take that answer and box method or distributive it with that. Reason being, remember, I think I explained this before, you don't distribute it through both, because remember, I think I described it as, you know, they'll do that like pyramid of champagne glasses. They don't need to pour the champagne in every single glass. They pour it in the top one, and it overflows. So if you distribute through the first parentheses, it's going to naturally distribute through that second parentheses when you multiply the answer by that second parentheses. Okay? Yes, sir?
So the first method you said was we can do the box with 3 plus I and then negative 6 plus...
Yes. That's the way I'm going to do it, just to keep it straight. I'm going to go ahead and multiply these guys first, and then take the answer and distribute that negative 7i through it. Okay? I might need some more paper, so I'm whipping out my little scratch paper here. So let's see. Negative 6 times 3 is negative 18. Negative 6 times I is negative 6i. Positive 4i times 3 is 12i. And positive 4i times I is positive 4i squared. I'm going to simplify this as far as it can go before I distribute. You okay with that? So I have negative 18. What have I got here? Plus 6i plus 4. And instead of I squared, I put negative 1. So that's negative 18 plus 6i minus 4. Why did I say 4 and write 5? Ever do that? And then negative 18 and negative 4 is negative 22 plus 6i. Are we okay with how I got that? What was that?
Negative 18 and the negative 4, right?
That's the result of these two being multiplied together.
Wait.
This, that's a 4. I wrote a 5 for some reason and had to correct myself. Okay? Now, I'm not done because I can't forget that I didn't distribute that negative 7i out here. You ready? So negative 7i times negative 22 is positive 154i. And negative 7 times positive 6i, sorry, negative 7i times positive 6i, negative 42i squared. So one more time, I have to replace that I squared with what? Minus 42 times negative 1, which becomes 154i plus 42. But that's not standard form, is it?
No.
So how should I write my answer for number 8?
42 plus 154i.
I said it first.
Yep. Okay, and there's my little scratch work for that one. All right, so you go ahead and try number 9, since it's like the exact same type of problem. Okay, are you going to beat me through this?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yeah,
on Kyrie too.
I'm always on
I
target.
should put her in.
She needs to spank. Why you gotta take everything like that?
We can do the ASMR for you.
So far, so good?
You beat her.
Yeah, I beat her.
Right, that's just distributive property. That ends up being 152i plus 20 times -1. And how am I going to write my answer?
Instant.
So?
Cause you on your option.
Yes, that's called standard form. A plus bi. I has to be the last thing. All right, last problem. Sorry.
We have 2 more problems.
You were supposed to be working on this. You shouldn't be copying this down step by step because you should already be done with it.
Ooh, got him.
I did go fast, but I gave you guys like a 4-minute head start.
Got him, boss.
Oh, was that just
Damn, so you have to distribute 3 seams?
I'm not making excuses.
This is a little extra.
Okay, going on to the last one. What do you notice about the last one?
They're all equations.
There's too many.
Oh, you know what? Here, I'm going to be a genius right here and give myself some more space. Boom, look at that. Whole piece of paper for it.
I like that.
Who told you about that?
I came up with that on my own. Okay. What?
Stop your wizardry.
Can I what?
Stop your wizardry.
I'm confused. Okay. Now, this one's a little bit different. This one's a little bit different because if I were to multiply these guys first, I don't have just distributive property afterwards. So here's how I'm going to do this one. I am just going to start with 2 parentheses at a time. Once I get my answer, I will take that answer and multiply it by the 3rd parentheses. Okay? So if I multiply this one, -8 times 8 is -64. -8 times -4i would be positive 32i. 5i times 8 is 40i. And 5i times -4i is -20i squared. I'm going to simplify this, and then I'm going to multiply by that last parentheses. So -64 plus 72i minus 20, and instead of I squared, I'm putting -1. So -64 plus 72i plus 20.
Yeah.
So I think I have -44 plus 72i. Yes? You agree?
Yes.
So that's my answer when I multiply the first 2 parentheses. Now I'm going to bring this last guy and multiply him here.
That's so easy.
So I multiply just one more time. Okay? So -44 times -1 is positive 44. -44 times 8i is -352i. 72i times -1 is -72i. And then finally 72i times 8i squared is what? 576i squared.
How is that just right now?
All right, so let's see. 44. And then that right there, let's see. -352
Oh, yeah, -420.
minus 72. -424i. plus 576 times negative 1 becomes 44 minus 424I minus 576. And then one last step. 44 minus 576 is negative 532 minus 424I. Now don't tell me you're afraid of big numbers, because that's going to be what the size of the numbers that end up on your paycheck, and you're going to need to know how to deal with them.
Like that.
Right? Right? Okay. So I want you to try number 11 now. Number 11 is the exact same style. You try number 11.
For number 11, can you do the box method, but like 3 rows? Like 3 on the top.
No,
See, that's why you do distribute.
I wouldn't. You would just do a 2x2 box and then another 2x2 box.
I'd rather do that.
So those of you who think that the box method is some fancy shortcut, it's not necessarily
It's more work.
a shortcut. I will do this one using the box method, but no, you can't just make a larger box.
Yeah, this one's number 11. Yeah, it's not that bad.
So here we go.
What's the sharpener?
What flavor stays?
It's a, I don't know.
I was doing it for Tyree.
We're gonna do that on Tuesday.
So far so good?
You know,
So this gives me 20 minus 3I plus 2I squared. So 20 minus 3I minus 2, or 18 minus 3I. So far so good that you get 18 minus 3I from multiplying the first two parentheses. Good answer. So I have 18 minus 3I, and I'm going to multiply that by 1 plus 8I. So I just have to do another box here. 18 minus 3I and 1 and 8I.
Miss Franken,
Yeah.
why did you take the negative off of 20?
Why did I what?
Take the negative off the 20.
Good question. Why did I take the negative off the 20?
I was confused.
So that should be negative 22. Thank you for catching me before I went much further.
You're welcome.
I did ask if everyone was okay with my answer, and nobody spoke up.
do it all like
So,
My apologies.
okay, so negative 22 times 1 is negative 22. Negative 22 times 8, negative 176I. Broke my box is too small. The numbers are too big. Negative 3I and negative 24I squared. So let's see, I have negative 22 minus 179I minus 24I squared. That's where I should end up. Okay? So again, even if you use the distributive method, you should still end up with the same answer. Okay? All right. Happy study.